everybody. Thank you all so much for joining us for Delta Omicron's annual Women in Music panel discussion, organized by DO's Community Committee. My name is Hannah Broomhall, and I'm the Community Committee Chair for DO.
I'm PD Pastor Richard. I know a lot of school music community is busy participating in Honor Band and competing at NATS this weekend, so this event will be recorded, and we will upload that on social media for anyone who couldn't join us today.
I'm also excited to share that tonight is kicking off our March Philanthropy Initiative, which is a clothing and menstrual product donation drive. So there are boxes up at the top of Bird if you brought anything with you tonight, but those boxes will also be in the School of Music library right underneath the PMA and DO photos for the next week, and also at our Musicale next Friday, April 1st.
I know we all can't wait to hear from our amazing panel, but before we dive into our panel discussion, I would like to take a moment to introduce these incredible women sitting in front of us. Dr. Wanju An, Dr. Kara Huber, Dr. Rebecca Long, and Dr. Allison Ogden.
Dr. Kara Huber is a Grammy-nominated Canadian-American pianist. She's performed across North America, Europe, and Australia, including solo appearances at Carnegie Hall, the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts, the Piano Virtuoso Series at the Canadian Opera Company, the Rising Stars Piano Series in Southampton, New York, and Steinway Series at the Smithsonian American Art Museum. Recent orchestral appearances include the York Symphony Orchestra, the North York Concert Orchestra, and a performance conducting and performing with the Canadian Chamber Orchestra. Dr. Huber has received numerous prizes and awards for her performances, including the Audience Favorite Award at the Cincinnati World Piano Competition. Quickly gaining an international reputation for extraordinary prowess and flair for contemporary music, Kara works closely with living composers and recorded with the Arc Ensemble for Chandos Records, which was nominated for a 2017 Grammy Award for Best Chamber Music / Small Ensemble Performance. She received training from the University of Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music and the Glenn Gould School of the Royal Conservatory of Music.
Dr. Rebecca Long is a visiting lecturer at the University of Louisville in Louisville, Kentucky, United States. She holds a PhD in music theory from the University of Massachusetts Amherst, as well as degrees from the University of Southern Mississippi and the University of Arkansas. Her research interests include 18th century music, the music of 20th century Catalan composer Roberto Girard, and pedagogy. When not teaching or working on research, Dr. Long enjoys reading, cooking, and writing about herself in the third person.
Dr. Wanju An is the Assistant Director of Choral Activities at the University of Louisville. She directs the University Chorus, Women's Chorus, and teaches undergraduate and graduate courses. She holds her DMA in Choral Music from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and a Master of Music in Choral Conducting from the University of Louisville. Dr. An graduated as valedictorian in receiving her Bachelor of Music from Yonsei University in Seoul, South Korea. She is also an active singer as a member of the Louisville Chamber Choir and a pianist and organist at Trinity Presbyterian Church in St. Gabriel.
Dr. Allison Ogden is an advocate for pioneering art and music, multimedia collaborations, and cross-cultural partnerships. Electroacoustic composer Allison Ogden began studying composition at the age of 13 with Andrew Wagner of Syracuse University. In 1997, she entered the Eastman School of Music as a double major where she studied clarinet with Kenneth Grant and composition with Augusta Reed Thomas, Joseph Schwanter, Christopher Rouse, and David Liptak. It was during her time at Eastman that she became passionate about computer, electroacoustic, and multimedia works after studying computer music with Alan Schindler at the Eastman Computer Music Center. In 2001, she moved to Chicago and entered the University of Chicago's PhD program in music composition, where she studied computer music with Howard Sandroff and composition with Shulamit Rand, Marta, sorry if I butcher this, Elzbieta Sikora, Bernard Brands, and Kotuka Suzuki. She received a PhD in music composition and computer music from the University of Chicago in June 2008. Dr. Ogden has taught numerous music courses at the University of Louisville, including Music in Western Civilization, Women in Music, Music Composition, Orchestration, and Music Theory.
All right, and now it's time to hand it over to our amazing panel for our first discussion question. What inspired you to pursue a career in music?
We're going down the lines?
See, this is the
I
part
would
where we
say
all look
down the
nervous
line
at each
that
other, right?
You go first.
Ah, dang it. I think for me, I was raised by wolves, engineers. And so I had this interest and fascination with science and how things worked from a very, very early age. I also was fortunate enough to have piano lessons as a child where it was half piano and half music theory. And so I've been spelling chords and resolving leading tones since I was not tall enough to ride the roller coaster. And if my students are here, all of you just figured it out, right? Like every last one is like, that explains her. But for me, I think once I got to college, I went going to be a band director, and then I wanted to be an English major, and then I was like, no, music's really the thing I'm best at and the thing I really like. And so I ended up combining my interest in how things work, writing, and music into a music theory career.
I think for me, at least in my younger years, it was just, quite simply a love of making music, a love of listening to music, a love of talking about music, and just all things, just, making music in a band, making music in a group, and just the joy of being involved in music, having music as a major part of my life, like a lot of young people, I think. As I got older, I think one of the things that really started to, I think, impact my understanding of music and its relationship to my own life was the social impact, the sort of politics of music, and the way that music can change our perspectives and change our ways of thinking about the world and introduce us to new ideas and to new concepts. One of the classes I teach here is hip hop, and to sort of draw it to that, I think one of the things that really drew me to hip hop is that it did introduce me to ideas, and I was able to hear voices and perspectives that I never would have heard otherwise. I grew up in a small town, largely white town, upstate New York, as a young, teenage white girl in this small town. These were voices and perspectives I never would have been exposed to otherwise had I not been listening to hip hop. As an example, hip hop of the late 80s and the 1990s from South Central Los Angeles and Compton, speaking on police brutality, issues of racial profiling, the tactics of the LAPD under Daryl Gates, the targeting of community activists. These are all things that in my own little bubble that I lived in, I never would have been exposed to these things that were happening. I never would have been exposed to the voices of the communities that were undergoing these horrible experiences. And I think I started to understand that music really had the power to sort of break through, at least from my own perspective, this kind of bubble that I had been raised in, and introduced me to, again, voices and ideas and concepts outside of that which I had been raised. And I think once you've had your own little bubble shattered, it's easier to have it shattered again. It's easier to sort of, see that your worldview that you were raised in isn't the only one. And I think it can lead us to accept sort of change in our own world, in our own perspectives, be willing to change and be willing to change our concepts and our entire worldview, and to understand, I think, that, life outside of the bubble, that shattered bubble, a life filled of knowledge and of empathy and a search for equity is much more exciting and much more invigorating than a life of sort of comfort within that bubble. And at least for me, I think it was music that really helped to shatter that bubble and to lead me out into the world, and not just the world, physical world beyond my little town, but a world of ideas and new perspectives and new concepts. And so I know music was that for me. I know it was for a lot of other people as well. And so as I sort of grew into music and be able to sort of understand that music was doing that to my life, I became increasingly interested in music's capabilities in that particular respect.
Wow. I started music as a major to be happy, actually, to live a happy life. Because I learned, my parents just taught me, not taught me, I just got a piano lesson, started to get a piano lesson in my 4 years old, and music was being a big part of my life, but I didn't want to do as a living work, so I just wanted to do as a hobby, because at a young age, if I don't make a huge success in music, I will be very poor. I thought that. So I just want to do a kind of more normal life rather than pursuing music. So I went to the college with a majoring in political science. And after that, I worked in HR department in a company in Korea for a few years. And during that time, I realized what I really want, because I never knew that I'm not the person I can work in front of a computer from 9 to 6. It was a torture to me, and I realized it too late, but I thought it's not late when I considered entire of my life. So I just turned down my life, and I started, I went to the university again to make majoring in music, and that's why I'm here with you. So yeah, I decided to major in music to be happy. Yeah.
Do you still use your political science degree?
Oh, I'm trying.
I, like Allison, grew up in a very small town. I bet mine was smaller than yours, actually. How big was yours?
I don't know, like 10,000 maybe?
900.
Okay, so yeah, you win the small town award.
Middle of nowhere, Illinois, we were just talking about this, covered in cornfields and soybean fields, and music wasn't really a thing there, except for people who maybe are familiar with whatever they're listening to, like country music or pop music is on the radio. And my older brother was a total introvert. And my parents were like, oh, we should do an extroverted activity for my brother. And it was like, oh, we'll put him in piano lessons because that makes sense. It's like a performance activity. And so he started in piano lessons, and I just kind of wanted to do everything my older brother wanted to do. And I started picking up kind of like what he was practicing by ear and started playing on the piano. And so he got very irritated at me, and my parents were like, oh, that's probably a sign to put her in piano lessons. So that's kind of how it started. I started when I was 5 years old, and it's just something that I loved from the very beginning. My parents never had to ask me to practice. It was just something that I always wanted to do, was very passionate about, and it was kind of a novelty in this small town for there to be a pianist. So I started accompanying already when I was in the 3rd grade or something like that. And it was never a question because it was always something that I loved to do and I was super passionate about. So I never even thought oh, do I want to go into this? Do I want to major in music? It was just kind of the career field that made the most sense for what I was excited about doing all the time.
Thank you, ladies. All right, next question. How do you navigate being a woman in a field often dominated
Oh no, we are so starting at the other end.
I guess that's fair. Wait,
No,
will you say
I
it
took the
again?
last one. I'm not doing this the whole time.
Being a woman in a field often dominated by men.
I'm more excited to hear your guys' answers, but as a pianist, I think, yeah, for sure. I mean, just talking about like the world of you know, soloists and chamber music and gigging and all that stuff. Yeah, it's definitely more dominated by men. Fortunately, I think it's kind of been taken over by more powerhouse women, you know, in the more recent past. Which I think maybe is probably not true as much for conducting and composition, which is why I'm more excited to hear what you have to say. But yeah, it's about doing the hustle. It's about you know, continuing to work incredibly hard and doing all the networking and do all the things that you're supposed to do. And yeah, I think it requires women often to do a lot more work and a lot more hustle, I think, is what I'm probably going to say a lot this evening, and being able that you're always performing to at your best all the time, so that you can compete just as well with the men that are in the industry too.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you guys agree?
Yes, as a conductor, I think conducting field is switching slowly. So more women or even orchestra conductors,
Yeah.
it's just showing up a lot, but still majority are male dominated field. So yes, work hard. That's the thing. Yeah, but I try not to think that kind of thing a lot because it just makes me depressed. So I, of course, acknowledge that reality is really crucial, but I didn't let that kind of fact make me feel depressed or kind of less motivated. So I just decided to be more, what is the good word? Optimistic or positive? So just, yeah, work hard, and whenever I chance, so I can get the chance, grab the chance. That's the thing. But actually, I had one thing to say to you. So I just saw a reply about this. These are kind of big things, women and men, and what women can do better in men-dominated field. And I just saw one reply. So because of the equality issue, do we have to take mediocre women because we have to be inclusive? And that reply is no, we want to take that's really kind of we want to take women in excellency over men's mediocre men. So that was really kind of sad because I don't want make that kind of men versus women, but we're all human. And in general, music industries are just getting kind of small. I think it's just smaller because of pandemic or whatever else. It's just field is getting tough. So be competent is the thing, regardless women and men. But of course, I understand. Still, it's a man-dominated field, and as a woman, visibility is kind of crucial thing. So to get the chance, we have to work really hard. That's the thing. But always be positive. Be positive. That's the thing.
I was going to go kind of down a more slightly negative route, and I probably still am to a degree, but I'm going to raise it positive at the end. I'm going to go down a little bit, and then I'm going to come back up. So bear with me. So composition, overwhelmingly male-dominated industry, and especially computer music and music technology, even more so. And you know, I've unfortunately had a lot of negative experiences associated with that. I've had, at conferences, at festivals, frequent instances of sexual harassment. I've seen those same people, who were guests at a festival, be celebrated time and time again, despite the fact that, I had spoken up and other women had spoken up. So I've seen those kind of things just dismissed, categorically out of hand. I've gone to festivals in computer music, and when I show up, I've been asked, so whose girlfriend are you? As though I'm not a, legitimate participant. And I can even remember at undergraduate applying for college, I went to a major institution for my composition interview, walked in with my compositions, they didn't ask for them ahead of time, and I was talked to for about 2 minutes and they told me to go, and I didn't get in, and they never once even opened my composition. Never opened my score. So I've seen a fair amount of discrimination related to my gender. And I've experienced it at the outset, and I've experienced it throughout. And it can get really discouraging. And I think, I have tried to keep on speaking out. I think, I'm gonna date myself, but at least a couple of decades ago when I was early on, kind of starting off in the world, see a lot of those complaints that I would raise just be dismissed or ignored. And I think that is changing a lot in recent years, which is really, really encouraging. And I think we all need to keep on speaking out anytime we see an injustice. So I do think things are changing, but there is still a lot to overcome, and certain fields are, without a doubt, worse than others. That's my kind of on the negative side, but I'm gonna bring it up here and say that as I did say, that I do see things changing, which is wonderful. But one of the things that has always helped me personally kind of navigate all of these struggles is to have a support system in place. People that I know support me, people that I know care, and sort of a community of people who I can rely on, who I can just quite simply vent to, right? And just tell about my frustrations, and who will hear me. And I think that is really, really critically important for everybody, regardless of gender, regardless of, what kind of field you go into. I think having that support system is really, really important. And I know that that's gonna be harder for some people to establish than others. Some people might be really lucky to have that already within family. And others might not, and it might be harder to create that support system. But we have, the family that we're born to, and we have the family that we choose. And you're in this kind of, younger phase of your life where you can start to develop your community and develop your chosen family. And I think picking that wisely and picking people who are like-minded, who are going to be supportive, and who are going to, sort of stand with you and be there for you, and for who you are going to be there for them as well. I think developing that community and that group of people is something that has helped me throughout my whole life sort of navigate any kind of difficulty that one can encounter. So if I have a recommendation for how to navigate or just even get through life, it's, find people who you can count on, who will support you, and who you will support in turn.
We didn't plan this, but most of my answer is actually about me finding that support group, and I'm also gonna date myself. So to give you some perspective on my music theory, when I joined the Society for Music Theory in 2004, I don't want to think how many years ago that was. The society, you didn't have to whisper it. I was doing fine. Gonna go home and put on some extra wrinkle cream. But the field was about approximately 70 to 75% male, 25 to 30% female. And that was almost 20 years ago. It hasn't budged in 20 years. We've had a ton of initiatives of we should get more women involved in music theory. We've had similar initiatives for people of color, because we are a overwhelmingly white field. And nothing's budged, and we're kind of working on, okay, how do we structurally change things now? But when I first entered, I noticed very immediately it was, for lack of a better term coming to mind, a boys' club. I was surrounded by 70% men. At some conferences, there was one where we had 40 people in a room. I was one of 2 women. The sole advantage there is there's no line at the ladies' room when you're one of 2 women at a conference. That was nice, but otherwise, it's just, you do feel kind of like, do I belong here? Should I belong here? So my immediate response to that was, okay, I'm gonna become one of the boys. I grew up around engineers. I can do one of the boys. Like, I can totally fit into this role. And I did okay, but I was really masking a lot of concerns I had and just sort of like letting a lot of sexism and sexual harassment just kind of fly off of me when I really should have said something. And that wasn't sitting well with me either, especially when I became older and I'm like, no, there are now younger women getting hit with this and I need to act as like a human shield, best I can. So eventually I started developing, and I still have, I should preface this with, I still have male scholar friends like left, right, and center. But I started just developing this group of women friends of all different levels of scholarship. So like senior scholars, people around my age, people just coming up in the field and starting, and we kind of have this mutual support network and, you know, a few group chats where we just throw things like, okay, what do you all think about this? What do we do here? I'm in this situation. How do I navigate this? And it's, you know, am I seeing this right? Am I right to be offended about this? Am I just misinterpreting something? And it's so nice to have someone to bounce that off of who gets it. Because I have a lot of male friends, bless them, they are wonderful people, but if I say, hey, this person said this thing to me that is, you know, obviously sexist, they'd be like, well, are you sure they meant it that way? I'm like, yes, I'm pretty darn sure. And it just, they don't quite understand that or how you feel being like, 30% of a field instead of being the majority. And finding all those women and kind of connecting myself to them and supporting them or getting support from them has been like one of the most valuable experiences of my professional life.
Thank you all. Thank you. The next question is, what is the hardest hurdle you've had to jump to advance your career?
I can start it off this time. Okay, so as I kind of alluded to, there's been a lot. And I think for me, maybe the hardest has been kind of achieving this life-work balance. I hope it's different now, but I think it's kind of that, like, women of my generation, that again makes me kind of sound old, but women of my generation, we're kind of sold a bill of goods in that we kind of had this mantra in our, like, all the time, like, you can have it all, like, you can be president, and you can have the job of your dreams, and you can have as many children as you want, and you'll make lots of money, and all you have to do is work hard, and it'll happen for you. Yeah, it's way harder than they made it sound. And it's way more complicated, and there's a lot more hurdles to achieving that than they ever really told us at that time. And there's, I think problems at every sort of level, whether it's political, governmental, institutional, societal, that makes that difficult. And so for me, just as the probably most obvious example is, I'm a mother. I've had 2 children. At the time when I had both of my children, I was an adjunct professor at Jefferson Community and Technical College. I had 0 maternity leave, none, not a day. I had an emergency C-section, and I had to go back to work as soon as I was basically able to get up and walk and go back to work. That is not healthy for anybody involved. And trying to navigate, doing it twice, trying to navigate being a mother and having a family and trying to maintain my work and trying to be a composer, it's a lot. It's really challenging, and there's very little there's very little support system in place for women to do this. And you kind of realize as you go through this experience, and so many of these experiences that, you can, as I mentioned, how do you navigate this was the question previously. you can have your own way to sort of deal with these problems, but you come to a point when you realize that these problems are bigger than the individual can fix. These problems are societal, they're governmental, they're policy related, and it takes an entire sort of, country to fix a lot of these issues. So I think, I've come to understand that it kind of takes like sort of 3 parts of my brain to sort of navigate, I guess, these issues, kind of drawing back to question number 2, which is, I think it's important for us to all remain very politically engaged and understand that there are certain things at the political level, at the policy level, that we really have to address as women if we're going to be able to, succeed in our career and have that life that they promised us with, children and, family and also a career. Advocate for things like maternal leave and also paternal leave as well. So I think those things are really important at the political level. At institutional levels, we need to do the same sort of advocacy. And it can't just be at the personal level, like, I need this for me. It has to be for everybody. Because I think, we can't achieve nearly as much change on the individual level as we can collectively. So I think that it's really important when we sort of think about these hurdles that we face. What are they, but also what can we do to solve them? And while they're complicated, and there's a lot of different ways and issues that we have to consider in solving all of these problems, I think we stand a much better chance at doing so if we act collectively and we work together for the betterment of everybody, rather than just kind of negotiating, a particular scenario for the individual. Yeah.
I can go next if y'all want. I'm like, yeah, please. Totally different topic on my answer. I think the biggest hurdle that I had to get over was being insanely anxious about how I was perceived. And I mean, a lot of that, we can say a lot of that is societal. There's a lot of pressure on women to look a certain way and act a certain way and dress a certain way and so many other things a certain way. Just insert your favorite noun here. But then a lot of it also came from where and how I was raised. I was raised in a community where there was a serious problem with superficiality, to say the least. It was very much, who do you know? What do you look like? Who are you hanging out with? Grades and such were also important, but, I had a lot of pressures from my small community and my family of like, no, you can't do that, don't do this, don't do this. And I was basically spending 24/7 a day guarding my own behavior and everything else, to the point where, to give you an idea of how bad this problem got, when I was in my bachelor's, I actually usually scheduled my practice session for about 6 in the morning. And now I know a lot of you know I'm a morning person. You're thinking, oh, morning person, Dr. Long, 6 in the morning seems fine. No, it was actually because I was terrified that people would hear me practicing and that they would think I was a terrible musician because I was messing up in the practice room where, I don't know, maybe you're supposed to mess up before you get to the concert hall, but like, it was still like, oh my gosh, what if someone hears me reading this new, insanely hard piece and they hear me mess up on my sight read, and then they're gonna think I'm a horrible person and I don't belong here. I mean, I regularly had panic attacks from this and everything, and it took, I'm not gonna lie, it took a couple of good therapists to help me with this. Like one who was just sort of like pointing out things that, had I been awake to myself for 20 years, I would have noticed. I mean, it was the equivalent of like, hey, Dr. Long, did you know the shirt you're wearing is black? And I was like, what? What? And then you're just like, oh, yeah. Oh, has it been black this whole time? Oh my God. And then I also had one therapist who specialized in performance anxiety, who really helped me, not with actually playing, because this was beyond the point where I'd considered a performance career. The anxiety had kicked me out of that way before this, but with speaking in public, see now. And like teaching, I was always fine, but getting in front of a room full of people and talking about my experiences, or getting up in front of a room full of fellow scholars and talking about my research, was still a massive stress-inducing issue for me, where I would just be shaking and unable to speak. I once psychosomatically lost my voice from fear. And so for me, the biggest hurdle I had to get over was literally getting over this whole, like, people are constantly watching you and they will remember every last thing you do. They won't. Newsflash, they won't. Like, do you remember the embarrassing thing that you saw today from another person? Probably not. And if you do, you won't remember it in 48 hours, nor will the people who, like, look at you. Like, you trip in front of everybody, like, yeah, they might remember for the next day, but they're not going to remember, like, a week later, because they've probably done something stupid and embarrassing that they're going, oh my God, everybody saw that. So that was my biggest hurdle, was trying to figure out, like, how to kind of not get over my anxiety, but, like, process through it.
I relate with that very hard. Yeah, yeah. There was one time where I threw up before a competition. It was only because part of the competition was talking about the pieces. It was the first time I had to do that. It was too much for me, so I relate hard. What I actually really wanted to talk about was the hurdle of just being a student and being a performing artist during a pandemic. I'm sure that all of you can relate with that as well. I was finishing my doctorate and actually just graduated in August, and so I was also a student just like you guys are, and it was hard. It's still hard, having to navigate and pivot, all those things that you guys had to do, dealing with online learning and being separated, all of those things. And sometimes I just think it's good to, like, remind yourself that, like, that was a really, really hard challenge that you guys had to overcome, and just giving yourself a little bit of extra credit for doing that. And also navigating a performing arts career during the pandemic, it's still really scary. You know, the way that arts were just kind of or performing arts, concerts, everything just kind of had to disappear for a while, and figuring out how to pivot and how to continue and how to make music still an essential part of life and culture. It's a very scary time, and yeah, that I think is a really big hurdle, and I just wanted to mention that because I see all, like, my students out there too, and I just think you all are amazing for doing that and continuing to do what you're doing.
My biggest hurdle is slightly out of topic because surviving in the States, leaving my home country, that was the biggest hurdle for me, because English is my second language, and I cannot believe I'm here and talking something, because I was scared to die. Outside of music, oh my God, I'm talking something, I don't know what I'm talking about. Anyway,
Your English is great.
Yes.
So surviving here as this outfit, Asian woman, that was the biggest hurdle. But luckily, I always had a great, in the great community, very inclusive, very friendly professors. Not everybody, but and friends. That's why I overcame. I was able to overcome everything I faced, and yes. And I just was able to finish my degree, kind of thing. And one thing is, can I talk a little bit more? So I just, about the number one question, the speaking of it, I think it's important when you face a kind of not fair situation. So one thing is just remind me, back in my DMA coursework, one old gentleman, I took his class. There no option. It was just, I had to take his class, and he, on the syllabus, there are no standard. There are no tests, there are no paper or no things. So we're all doing the group project, all same together. But I always got lowest grade, and I thought first semester or first year, I thought because of my English, so I practiced really hard because it really took so many time for me. In Korean, I can finish this work in 1 hour, but in English, I have to spend 3 and 4 hours because it's not my, but it's okay. And I'm here and that's my job. But I practice a lot and I got help from my other team members, and we all did together. But still, he always gave me lowest grade. So in my second year, I emailed him really polite way because I'm a little yes, I'm kind of cautious person. So, hey, hello, my name is Wonjuan, and I think I did my best to develop my English skills to project for your project, assigned project or whatever else, and I think I made a biggest improvement in English and contents-wise everything. But still, you gave me this grade, and what can I do better so I can meet your standard? And he replied me back, oh, that was my mistake, and he just gave me the same grade. Then that was a really frustrating moment ever in my life because it just proved I don't think it was a mistake for 3 semesters. It proved he just gave me that lower grade because I don't know the reason, but because of my appearance or because my English is my first language, not my first language. Anyway, so speaking up, just can ring that professor, I think. Then he didn't do it the next semester. And he was trying to be polite to me because, she's not just shy girl. She speak up. Mm-hmm. So I think sometimes just facing to that kind of unfairness is an important thing. Anyway, surviving here with very nice person was my biggest challenging in my career. Okay.
Thank you. How do you overcome imposter syndrome?
I can go first. I love that we're all looking at each other on the imposter syndrome, like, am I qualified to answer this? So that group of women I mentioned in my earlier answer is how I survive imposter syndrome. I don't make enough of my own self-esteem, so store-bought is fine. I kind of have to go that route sometimes. Like, I definitely have a solid group of friends that I can call and be like, hi, I think I'm the stupidest, worst human being on the planet. Can you help with this? And they're like, you're not the stupidest, worst human being on the planet. This insert political figure exists. I'm like, excellent point, but please keep going. And then they also, like, I find with my imposter syndrome, with my anxiety, I always think that I'm underqualified for everything, and I tend to set the standard way too high. Case in point, 2 weeks ago, I got contacted by a publisher to look over and kind of review someone else's proposal for a translation of a work originally in German to English. I have 6 years of German and passed a translation exam in German. I don't know this guy's theory, but I do know of him and know like the basics of this topic. And I'm still sitting there on the phone with my friend, Dr. Rachel Mann at University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley, going, but I'm not like native level fluent, and I have never read this guy's work before, and I just don't know. And she's like, and she said, her quote, which she told me I could use tonight, stop thinking like a girl. She said, think of every guy in our lives and how they could be half as qualified as you are, and they'd still be like, yeah, I got this. Even if they had never even heard of the words music theory, some of them, like, you're eminently qualified. They wouldn't have contacted you if you weren't. You're taking this opportunity. So I have women like that in my life who can be like, no, stop spiraling, stop thinking like, stop self-hedging and do the thing, because you can do the thing. And so that's how I get over imposter syndrome. There's no like internal like, yes, I am good. Haven't gotten to that nirvana yet. If I do, I'll tell you how I do it. Write the whole thing down for you, I promise. Because like, I can retire on that kind of money. But yeah.
Can I dovetail off what she was saying? For one, yeah, I actually like the idea of like political figures as like, boosting your self-esteem. Because I mean, have you like watched the Senate hearings recently? I mean, I think all of us could do like a significantly better job than what was going down there. And I actually think it's really confidence boosting at times. But I think what you're talking about is like, right, we have, I think women are so socialized in our culture to make ourselves small, and to make our voices soft, and to be accommodating, and to be submissive, to be the peacemakers, and I still find myself doing it, and I get mad at myself, but like when somebody bumps into you at the store, you say sorry. Right? It's like this compulsion, I think, that we're taught that like we have to be accommodating to everybody else. And I think for me, it takes like proactive like mental effort to get over that. And maybe this is like corny and cheesy, but I think kind of like having like daily like build yourself up moments and build yourself up like mantras can be really helpful. And just kind of reminding yourself, I have studied a lot. I am knowledgeable. I am capable. Like I've gone and taught a class before. Like I can do it again. I've lectured before, this kind of thing. Like I can do it again. And just kind of reminding yourself and telling yourself that maybe this kind of like, self-affirmation, like mantras, again, maybe that sounds corny, but for me, I kind of feel like it works. And, there are moments when maybe I do have that kind of self-doubt, but I try to sort of like force my brain into telling myself like, yes, I'm strong and I'm capable and I'm knowledgeable and I'm smart and I can do this, like I got this. And I think for me, that's really helpful. And I think, hopefully like for all of you, I think, that like I believe that about like you all. I think like self-affirmation for you maybe, I don't know, will be helpful, like telling yourself if you're nervous, like you are all knowledgeable. I've had a lot of you in classes. You're knowledgeable and you're capable and you're smart. And when you leave this institution and go out into the world, like you will do well and you are successful and you are worthy of that success. Like you will have this. You will have this the same way I am able to, be effective in my job, hopefully. You will also be effective in your jobs. Like, I believe in you. And I hope that you'll believe in yourself. And if you don't, you have those moments of self-doubt, I think just kind of, find your own personal way through it. But I think kind of having that like just internal dialogue and that just reminding yourself, even if society has told you to be, accommodating and to be the peacemaker and to not speak up and to be submissive, you can just sort of proactively remind yourself like, I am worthy and I am here and my voice deserves to be heard. Your voices deserve to be heard. And don't forget that.
Can I just say that one thing I forgot, that you mentioned your possibly corny way of getting through things. I forgot my possibly corny way of getting through things is that little voice in my head that tells me like, you're not good enough, you're this or you're that. Give it somebody else's name.
Yeah.
And then you can say, shut up, insert name here. Make it someone that you don't respect. Everybody has someone they've met by this point in life that you're like, that person's opinion is and always will be the worst thing on the planet. Name the voice after that person. I'm not going to reveal what name I use because some of y'all probably know somebody with this name, but like there's somebody, it's like, okay. And I can just say in my head, shut up. And it works a lot of the time.
What's the name?
I'll tell you later.
Okay. One of my suggestions for self-motivation that I did a lot when I was your guys' age was putting those affirmations on Post-it notes on my mirror. So I would see them all the time, first thing, just like my mirror was covered with all these like self-motivation, like you can do it, all those things that you were just saying. So I think that's really important. Also keeping in mind of that whenever, like while you're performing too. There was a concert that I gave recently that went like really well for me. And I was like, what was different? And I was thinking about it. I remembered mentally, like while I was playing, saying things like, you got this, you can do it, you're doing, all these things. And I'm sad that it took me that long to incorporate into my playing, but I think that's really important to do for you guys, for you performance majors. The other thing I wanted to mention was just for imposter syndrome is being really careful about social media. I think that imposter syndrome for me manifests, it's like the most whenever I'm scrolling and seeing friends and colleagues are like, oh, well, this guy that got that gig, or this guy got this solo thing, and, I should have gotten that. Why did they get it instead of me, and all of that. So I realized telling a room full of 18 to 22-year-olds to limit your social media is probably not realistic. But just being aware of how you're feeling whenever you're internalizing, accomplishments that you're seeing from other colleagues and friends, that you don't let it bring you down, and not just scroll on. Well, you guys probably don't do Facebook because you're too young and cool, but Instagram, TikTok, just being careful, but not letting that take down your self-confidence level, because you guys are all amazing, and don't worry about it.
I worried about it a lot before. Then I just kind of switched my mindset. So first thing is stop comparing. That was the first thing. Then I was able to kind of free from, because so many people are not interested in others. They just care themselves. So I have to take care of myself rather than just thinking about, stop as a comparing, or what can Kara, how can Kara think about me? I don't have to think about that. So just focus on.
I care about you.
Yeah. So focus on yourself. So I did it. So I just set the kind of daily goal. I want to achieve this. So really, it was a small thing in conducting. I want to can complete my staccato gesture better, kind of thing. So daily exercise, and I set the daily goal. So I just wanted to see kind of improvement, small improvement, and when it just compile, it makes a big improvement. Second thing is just accept I'm not the perfect person. Then I can take a risk. Then it makes me, it allows me to step up. So I think that's the really great thing. So just be kind to yourself, and just focus on yourself, self-growing and self-nurturing, and I think that's the important thing. Okay.
What are some of the benefits you've experienced as a female musician?
I don't know how to answer that question, actually.
I can go ahead.
Yeah.
Even though I'm the one who listed the whole catalog of negatives. I think the way I'm going to take this is one that, for me, at least in my life experience, is a little bit more in recent years. Because I think there's a sort of change in culture and a change of ways of seeing this. But I think it's the support of women, the support of my peers. And I, again, because I'm from such a male-dominated, overwhelmingly male-dominated sort of niche in the music industry, that has been relatively recent. And I think part of the reason was, and there's probably lots of factors into it, but part of the reason, I think, is that because there were so few women in the field, and women were treated as such a novelty, essentially as token, like we have maybe a token woman programmed, that there was this kind of competitiveness that was set up due to this fact, that women weren't necessarily able to support each other, because everyone was trying to be that one woman who was maybe going to get into that conference and wanted to be the one person who was maybe going to be represented on this concert. And when you have just a crumb to dole out, everyone's going to fight over it. And I think that was kind of more my experience when I sort of was y'all's age and kind of starting off, that there was just so few women that there wasn't really any kind of network of support. I never had anything like this in any of my undergrad, like master's, doctorate, nothing like this ever. I would have loved something like this. It would have meant a lot to me, and I'm so happy to see it now. And I'm so happy that I do see, you know, communities of women composers and people from underrepresented ethnicities and heritages bonding and coming together to support each other and to try to change the dynamic within music composition, within music technology. That I do think it is something that is, I think, really that I'm starting to finally kind of see as a benefit. If you had asked me this question like 10 years ago, this would not have been my answer. But it's, you know, I think a really tangible difference now. And I'm really, really heartened and I'm really encouraged. I'm really sort of excited to see this new trend help women composers in a way that women composers, you know, weren't able to in the past. So I think this community of women supporting women, and I'm being, you know, very trans inclusive in that. I think that's incredibly important to note. I think this is really, really important development, and I'm really excited to see it continue and develop.
I forget what the question is.
Benefit as a woman?
Benefit. I think women are just stronger. Just like in general.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with everything that you're saying. I'm so glad that people are programming more stuff by female composers. That's something that I'm happy that I've been doing for a long time. I think it's because I feel as a performer like a more strength through the piece from a female composer. And I don't know if that's real or I'm just making it up in my head or I relate differently somehow to it. And I just think women are stronger and I think people should program more stuff by female composers all the time.
They should.
Yeah.
All right, fine. When all three of you look at me. So apart from the bathroom thing at conferences I mentioned earlier, I think I was actually really fortunate early in my career. Both of my first music theory teachers when I got to college were women, which is just, especially at that time, extraordinary that I had two women right in a row. One of them was our oboe professor, Teresa Delaplane, who had the philosophy of do no harm but take no garbage, which was really nice to see from someone who could be so wonderful and so understanding and then just not put up with any sexist, you know, racist or anything like that stuff. And then I also had Dr. Lisa Margulis, who's no longer at U of A. She's at somewhere now, I can't remember, Princeton, there we go. And she was maybe 28, and just, you know, young, vibrant, full of life, really excited about the subject, and again, was very serious, very soft, very sweet when she needed to be, but not when she didn't need to be. Neither of these two ladies folded. And I've met more and more women throughout my career that are like that. And I find that we kind of just scaffold each other up and support each other, which is super helpful. And I find now that I'm coming into age goes here, that I now have the opportunity to kind of mentor other women in my field, and I am taking that opportunity as much as I can. But not just other women, like as I said earlier, Society for Music Theory's got a serious issue in that we are predominantly white, male, and I'm just gonna take a shot in the dark here and say heterosexual dominated. Like cisgendered white male and heterosexual is like the majority. And so anyone who doesn't fit that, I try and like, if they, you know, come to me with problems, I try and help them. I try and mentor best I can, or I get them to whoever, you know, can. And I think that's one of the benefits of being at the point where I am as a woman, is I now have the opportunity to kind of be like, I still need support sometimes, but I can also be a support to somebody else, which has been so rewarding.
Me?
Yeah.
This was a kind of most challenging question for me, because I didn't know quite, oh, what is the benefit as a female? More creative? I'm not a parent. I don't have baby, but you're taking care of baby, and of course, men do, but I think it's kind of level is different, and from that kind of taking care of baby and I think that gives a lot of things to kind of insight, which I don't have, and I really want to have. So woman has that kind of more bigger, rounder insight thing. I don't know. So I really enjoyed your listening your thing. But yes, that's the thing. I'm sorry. I don't have it.
Thank you. What is your advice to those who are graduating?
Graduating. Never give up, and just trust yourself. You're good enough, and just go to the work and take a spot and be a nice, inclusive, well-rounded person. So we don't how can I say, we build up a real kind of equal. So equal word, kind of not what we're looking for between men and women, or in genders, or in races, or whatever else. Let's just be a big human, big-minded human. I think that's a good thing. That's the thing I really want to say. And never give up. You're great. You're great.
I'll echo that. Yes, I think, you know, again, those affirmations that we talked about, I think are really important. And, you know, we all have, you know, faith in you, and I want you all to have faith in yourselves as well. So keeping up that kind of self-affirmation, whatever your practice is, I think keeping up with that, I think, is really important. I guess I'll be, in a sense, take a couple of practical routes through this as well. One is, I think it's really important to stay engaged in a number of ways. Stay engaged with the political issues that affect our lives. Stay engaged with, you know, institutional issues. And I just want to touch on one thing here with this sort of institutional issues, is that there's been like a lot of research done about the fact that, you know, in various workplaces, in all kinds of different disciplines, that women do a disproportionate amount of unpaid, unsupported, and unacknowledged labor. And I have definitely found that in my case to be true in a lot of different respects. And I think it's something that we have to be really careful about and guard against. And we have to guard against it personally to be sure that we are not being exploited. But I also think we have to look out for like our peers and, you know, look around and seeing, is somebody consistently being delegated work, you know, that they're not being paid for, that they're not being supported in. So I think demanding accountability from our institutions and holding those institutions accountable, I think is extremely important. And whether that's a university or, you know, a high school or elementary school or whatever particular institution you end up at, I think guarding, you know, yourself in that respect and others as well is really, really important. And I guess the final thing I'll sort of say, I kind of along the practical route, is I think when I certainly was an undergraduate student, we've already sort of talked about this. We're not perfect, right? The sort of idea that we have to be perfect. I think I definitely felt that when I was an undergrad and strove for that, and this idea that talent and perfection would lead me towards some kind of success. And I think it's important, to obviously to do your best, but I think the more I've gotten into my life, the more I realize that showing up and being present is so much more important than I ever understood. Being there, being engaged, being reliable, being dependable, but most of all, just showing up, having your voice heard and speaking out, and being a face that people know and a face that is reliable and dependable goes a long way towards achieving your goal. So you can do the most perfect work and do everything absolutely perfectly, but if you're not sort of in a sense present, if you're not dependable, if you're not showing up, I think you're going to be much less successful in achieving whatever sort of career goal you want. So my recommendation, I guess, is to focus less on the perfection of everything that you do and more about being engaged in your community, and being engaged with all the people around you and the field, and showing up to events like this and other sorts of forums that are out there, just being present, and yeah, show up is my recommendation.
Practice.
Yes.
Does that go counter to what I just said?
Practice a lot. Everybody should practice piano. Practice for sure. Networking opportunities, like stuff like this, is really important. I feel like in music school, often you're taught to practice and how to perform, but not how to talk to people, and making sure that you're engaging with others and making friends, because these friends that you're making right now, they might be hiring you later in the future. And sticking up for what you need and what you deserve, making sure that you're sticking up for your education and taking care of yourself. And then my last thing is just self-care, making sure that you're taking care of yourself all the time, taking time out to, treat yourself to a little, fancy coffee, or go for a walk, have some puppy time, and being sure that you're taking care of yourself and your well-being.
So I'm going to dovetail, I think, a little bit late off of Allison's comment, which is not surprising. We've been doing that all night.
There's a reason for
Yeah, we used to share an office wall, and now we apparently share a brain. For me, two things. One, keep growing. Music school doesn't stop when you walk across the stage at graduation. Keep getting into genres you've never heard of, composers you've never heard of. Keep finding that too. Women composers you've never heard of. Keep finding perspectives that aren't yours and reading them and trying to understand them. Even if it's something that you don't think you agree with, try and see it from somebody else's shoes, even if you hate those shoes. But also don't be afraid to reevaluate. I had a lot of friends early on that eventually, I see them on Facebook, and that's about it now. And some of that's because those friendships, friendships and relationships, while very helpful to me at the time, eventually became something that wasn't helping me or wasn't supporting me and wasn't working for me. And please remember that, but I've known this person or their family or something like that. If that person's not supporting you and what you are and what you do, then you can walk away. And you need to remember that, because that's going to happen with some people in your life. Don't be afraid to take care of yourself in that way. It's uncomfortable, but it does help eventually. Sucks at the time, I will give you that. But don't be afraid to reevaluate people you are around, people who are in your life, things you believe, the things you value may change. Just realize that walking across that stage is just the first step. And we're here to support you all the way, and we believe in every last one of you, and you will do wonderful, wonderful things.
Thank you all. This has been so insightful. We have a minute if we want to take any questions from the audience. Anybody has anything you would like to ask our panelists?
Yeah, I just want to ask, because I know that a lot of you kind of relate to the whole, growing up and learning to like kind of make yourself smaller. How, in the moment, what's your advice for someone if somebody, underestimates you or says something sexist or tries to, minimize like who you are? Like, how do you respond to that? Like, what do you think is the best way, in your opinion? I know that's a really difficult question, but I've faced a little bit of that. I think all of us have. But what do you think is the best means of, kind of counteracting that?
I think I've got the beginnings of an answer for this, if y'all. Okay, yeah. Because I've also experienced a lot of sexism and other things, including, I'm okay with this going beyond this room at this point. It's been 10 years. Including at one point having my life threatened by someone who I essentially worked with. So for me, it's very situational. How I respond is going to depend on, I hate to say how sexist was the comment because anything is bad, but at a certain point, how sexist is the comment? Who is it coming from? Where are we at that time? If I'm in public with a person I know well and we're in a group and they say something sexist, I will pull them over later and say, hey, if I'm with someone privately and having a conversation and they say something sexist, I will usually just stop and shut them down unless I have a reason to fear for my safety or any sort of repercussions. And the other thing I can advise you as far as like if you're dealing with that in an institutional setting, so here or at your workplace or wherever, do what I did not. Run it to the highest person available if you have to, but keep going until you find someone who listens. I ran it to a department chair and someone who was essentially director of the school. I was laughed out of both offices. I should have kept going, but I didn't because I was like, oh, no one believes me. But if I had, I would have found the dean, who apparently has been very, very strict in years, in other years about such things. And this is an entirely different university, I should say, not U of L. Like, I should make that very clear right now. But keep talking until something changes, assuming it is safe to do so.
I'm debating what I want to say here.
Yeah, that's just stuff. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's really important. And I think I just will echo the fact that I think it's incredibly situational. It's incredibly situational. And I've also had really, really difficult situations. And, giving a counterexample to that, I had my own very serious sexual harassment case in my graduate studies. And I think you always have to evaluate. I mean, I hate to have even say this, you do have to evaluate in what kind of situation you are and if you're going to be safe running it up. And in my particular case, I ran it up as high as I possibly could, only to discover that I wasn't safe in running it up, that the school was going to circle the wagons and I was going to lose this fight. And if I continued to push it, I could lose it pretty spectacularly. And I hope that dynamics are changing in that. And so I want everyone to be able to speak up. I really, really want that. But there might be situations in which you find or you realize that you might not be safe doing so. Unfortunately, those things are still out there, and there are still people in positions of power who are going to circle the wagons. And I think, if you can get to a point where you are and you do feel safe running it up, I think that's really important to do so, because then everybody who comes after is going to benefit from that. But you also have to know that sometimes sometimes it doesn't always go well. It doesn't always go the way that you would hope. And I think that's part of working for institutional change. And that's honestly, I wasn't going to plan to actually bring it up, but that's been a huge motivator for me in my life. Like seeing how that happened and how that played out for me has been something that I have been kind of like consistently and steadily over the years, like trying to make little changes here and there so that hopefully the next time, you know, anybody, young woman or whoever, brings up a sexual harassment case, it won't go the way that it went for me. So I think when you do hit, if you bring something up and you do hit that wall that you shouldn't hit, but you do, I think the best you can maybe do is try to think, what are the institutional barriers? Why did this go wrong? And is there a way I can affect change? If I can't affect change here, then maybe I can affect change here. And maybe I can change this situation. There's that old quote about, you know, understanding what you can't change. I don't remember exactly how it goes, but understanding what you can change and what you can't change. And I think you have to sometimes evaluate in what situations is it best, like, am I going to fail here in trying to change this, whereas here I can make an effective change. So I think in the times when I failed in that particular case and ran up against that wall and found the wagon circled, I had to say, this is a particular case that I'm going to lose, but at my whatever future institution I end up at, I'm going to learn from that, and I'm going to try to do my best to ensure that that doesn't happen to anybody else. In more personal one-on-one situations, as you were saying, there might be scenarios in which somebody you know says something inappropriate, and you can pull them aside and you can have a talk with them about it. Or there may just be a time when somebody kind of deserves to be called out in public and they say, hey, maybe rethink what you just said. So I do think it's situational. And I wish I had like a one-size-fits-all kind of solution. But
No, I just said, of course, I get you.
yeah, I don't think there's a one-size solution. I think it is situational. But I think, you have to sort of do your best to do what's best for you. But also try to think about, at some point you're moving on and there's young women coming behind you and what is the best for them as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was gonna say. I mean, you were talking about trying to make a change, even if it doesn't happen for you. It's still setting up the next generation. And equipping them better too, so just making sure that it's known. But in situations that you were saying, like when it is maybe appropriate to call somebody out one-on-one, maybe you just spend some time thinking about what you would want to say, because I'm one of those people where, if you're in that situation and later on you're like, oh man, I should have said that at that guy, whatever. So having those kind of prompts in your brain, you can just whip them out whenever you need them, I think would be helpful too.
Yeah.
I'm not that kind of person. I always, I have to say that. I don't have that prompt, but yes, I totally agree with you. So it was really great here. And for underestimated thing, you can just do one more time. And here, I'm doing this thing and give the instructor or give somebody else the second chance to see what you really do. I think that's the thing.
Thank you so much. I think that's exactly what I need to hear. Yeah, I appreciate all of you. Thank you. That was a tough one.
It was a tough one.
Right, we're a little bit over our time, but thank you all so much for being here. I'm gonna fill a hand.
And I just want to say thank you all for doing something like this. I mean, as I said during this whole thing, I never had anything like this.
Me either.
Yeah, so this is, this is wonderful. So thank you all for putting this together.
I have been thinking a lot about after I got the questions, and it was really great time for me to just think about, so thank you so much. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have you all here.